Welcome back. It is time for another build. This time, Master Grade Mark V. So occasionally I hop out to the premium Bandai site, and if I see something that really catches my eye, I grab it. And this was definitely one of them. So we'll do the usual on this. We'll unbox it, time-lapse out the build, show it off at the end, and then I'll loop back around and talk about it. But before we get there, we have another viewer showcase. Let's drop it in here and take a look. Here we have the Master Grade Super Deformed Aerial from the viewer that goes by the Instagram handle at the Gundam Canuck. He's primarily an out-of-the-box builder, likes to take his time, get good clean models, but posing is where he really has his fun. And I think we can all agree, looking at these poses, that he does a really great job with it, especially the scale you get out of the Super Deforms. I'm really impressed with these. Okay, I really love the poses. It just looks awesome. And again, it's Instagram at the Gundam Canuck, and I'll throw it in the description. You really need to go check out. He's got a lot of nice builds out there. And with all of that, let's get over and get this thing out of the box. All right, let's see what we got going on here. Set all this over here for a second. So lots of blues. Lots of blues. Looks like we got some black wire going on there. More black parts. Little splash of yellow and red. Our decals. Looks like the usual wet slide decals. Some of the metallic decals there. And our instructions. I like the art on the front, looks really nice. Nice thing with Master Grades, right? They tell you what runners you need per section. Kind of helps when you have so many runners. But of course you got like the legs here, it looks like you almost need every runner there is, so maybe it doesn't help as much as I like. Ooh, some nice art here in the middle. Weapons and backpacks, rocket launchers. And of course our decals. So 27 pages. Looks like a good one. Let's get going. So let's take a look at it. So let's talk about something here first. I'm going to talk about something kind of fundamental because it kind of drives the whole thing. And it's one of those super obvious, like, duh things, but you really need to think about it for a second. If you look at this guy, you look at the box art, you look at the imagery online, this is a very simple design Gundam, okay? It is very slick. It is very smooth. Visually, it's not a complex Gundam, right? Like, kind of an extreme example here, but right, we take a Sazabi and lay it here next to it, right? And you just take a second looking at the two, right? The shoulders, the legs, the hips, the chest. It's like the amount of details in the Mark V is dramatically less than like a Sazabi or a Gramps even. I mean, there's just, and it's by design, right? I'm not, let me get Sazabi out here before I drop him or something. There we go. Sorry. And it's by design, right? This is, I'm not knocking the model in the least bit, right? It's the reality of the Gundam shrunk down into the model. That's what it is. And it's awesome. It really is. I love the slick look. I love the smoothness. I love the contrasting, the blues and the whites. It looks awesome. The kind of low visual complexity makes for some nice stuff in the model even and in the build, right? Like, the legs are a prime example. This lower part of the leg here, there's 3 armor pieces. That's it, 3, right? I mean, you look at like a Sazabi or a Gramps or something like that, there are a ton of pieces that make up like the lower leg part here. It doesn't have a lot of gimmicks. There's not a lot of moving things outside of your normal articulation that goes on. There's a few little jets on the back. The hard points here for the rocket pods you can take off and they kind of slide in. But it doesn't have a lot of that. So it makes for, you don't have that complexity of assembly where you have little parts and things having to snap together and slide against each other and all that kind of stuff. Overall, it just makes for an awesome build, right? You got bigger parts, they're easier to handle, easier to clean up. Bigger parts also means you end up with a smaller number of parts, right? If you take a Gundam that's got itty bitty little parts on a, you have to have a lot more parts to build it, right? This one, big parts, means you need fewer of them. So you have fewer parts, large parts. You have the lack of complexity going on with a ton of gimmicks and moving stuff. And it just makes for a really smooth build. This one clocked in at like 6 hours for me, which is short for a master grade. In my experiences, they usually 8+ hours, no problem. But again, the simplicity of the model plays into that. I did a couple of decals with it. Honestly, I love the minimalistic kind of look. So the decals really weren't doing anything for me. But I can tell you, wet slides, as soon as they dried, they just peeled right off. So you'll want some kind of setter with those if you're going to dig into that. The instructions for it, straightforward, right? They just go right through it. It is kind of like a perfect Gundam build, honestly. It's like if you ask me, like, start to finish, name a Gundam that from beginning to end is just awesome, this is now my #1 choice. It almost builds itself. It's that kind of build, right? There's even parts, like, it's kind of hard to see. There's these blue discs right here in the middle. They're oval, kind of rounded, and they have splines where, of course, they can only go in one way, up, down. You get the directionality right. But the thing is, on the opposite side here, it has 2 splines. So you actually can't get this part in the wrong place on the model. That's the only place it will go. And that's cool, right? That makes it a lot smoother of a build because you're not really worried about, is this on the right side? Is this flipped right? The only part that didn't do that was these rocket pods, and I somehow built them backwards. So the outside here should be a smooth blue, and it's not. I've got the gray showing. I tried to disassemble them enough to kind of fix my mistake there, but I was going to break them. They are put together well. The whole model is solid, right? And so I was going to end up breaking something or discoloring the plastic, trying to pry stuff apart. So I was like, you know what? It's just backwards. Okay, big deal. The other thing kind of to note is they have these little wires that if you're going to pose with like the incomes flying out, you're supposed to use these. As soon as you put any weight on this thing, it just goes like this. And I tried, bending this thing all over the place, doing all sorts of stuff. But as soon as you apply weight, it just ended up like this. So if you really want to get fancy with the incomes, you're going to want to find yourself something a little stiffer than this, because this just isn't going to cut it if you're really trying to go hardcore with a pose where the incomes are out and doing some cool stuff. Otherwise, it honestly is an awesome build. The question always is, if somebody comes to me and asks, and we'll say, well, first of all, what I just said, you need to understand that as a model, as a Gundam, the visuals of this are pretty simplistic, right? It is not a Sazabi or a Gramps or anything like that. So if that is your thing, if that is your look, then you may not like this build from a results standpoint. But the build itself is awesome. So even if you're kind of on their model, I would still grab it, because I don't think you could experience a better build. I really don't. The downside is, with it being premium Bandai, it's a little hard to get a hold of them. You gotta find somebody on eBay or something like that selling them to get a hold of one. So that's a little bit of a struggle, but not that big of a deal if you really want one. Otherwise, that is it on this one, really. It is just a good build. And, I feel like it ends up being a bad review sometimes when I don't have a ton to talk about, but it's just solid. It really is. You cannot go wrong building it, I promise. And keep the comments and feedback coming. Of course, the recommendations, I love them. If you want to do the viewer showcase, drop me an email, funwithgundam@gmail.com. Pretty simple one to remember. And thanks for watching.